Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Awesome Finds. Now today I got a whole bunch of soundtracks that I've been collecting over the last couple of months. 2 of them just arrived, so I thought why not do this video right now, show you guys what I got. So first up are 2 from Mondo. Now this first one, I guess technically isn't a soundtrack, but it's by Pentagram Home Video. It's called Who's Out There, and it's for a movie that never existed. It's like a found soundtrack for an 80s film, and it is really cool. It's very dark, ambient, heavy synth type music. I really enjoyed it. Comes in a nice sleeve. This one is on black vinyl. I believe there was a purple limited edition, but I missed out on that one. It was kind of one of those things, I was like, well, I'm already buying one album, might as well pick up this. And that other album I picked up is the Twin Peaks original score. Now this is a reissue. Now there was, I believe it came out in 1989, there was an original issue, but for some reason it never was released on vinyl in the US. So trying to pick up an original issue is very pricey these days. So Mondo, under the guise of Death Waltz, put this out. I think it's a really handsome package. This is die cut. I left the shrink wrap on for now. What's interesting is that you pull it out and now it's essentially a gatefold LP. Isn't that funny? So there you have the image of the composer right there. And what I find interesting is that normally if it's a single record in a gatefold, I notice that most time record labels will glue this shut, but they didn't. So I don't know, you can store extra things, maybe other memorabilia in there that you have of Twin Peaks. Now this is the coolest part. It is on damn fine coffee color vinyl, which I think is really cool. I wasn't sure what it was going to look like based on the pictures, but I really like this sort of marbling effect. The labels are pretty cool themselves too. I like sort of the minimalist approach to this overall design package. And there you have an eye with the track listings, side A and side B. Also, I looked on Discogs and I noticed there has been some reviews that said this doesn't sound that great. I guess maybe they didn't use the best pressing of it, or there was a lot of clicks and pops. I didn't really have that issue. I mean, there was a little bit, but it didn't bother me, and it was a little warped, but I kind of assume most thick colored vinyl is gonna come that way anyway, and it didn't affect my playback, so I'm okay with this. I think it sounds really good, so maybe my system isn't that sensitive. It's not picking up on this other stuff that other people are hearing, but just be forewarned that some people aren't thrilled with this pressing. Okay, so these next 2 came from Shipped Shore Media. Aaron contacted me, sent me out 2 albums, and they kind of do the same thing that Mondo does, Death Waltz sort of does, where they put out limited editions of soundtracks to movies you might not have heard of. They're kind of forgotten films in some respects, although this first one technically is not a soundtrack. This is Tiny Tim's America. Now this is a brand new album by Tiny Tim. Now you may be asking yourself, how is that even possible? Well, what they did is they had all these demos of Tiny Tim that were recorded kind of in the peak of his creative output, and they're just him playing in a hotel room on a cassette recorder, and they really cleaned it up well. And there's extensive liner notes too, which I was really happy about. Fantastic booklet, actually. Let me show you real quick. It just talks about this time period in Tiny Tim's life and kind of what he was going through. What was so amazing is that he was sort of, I don't know the right word for it, but a genius when it came to old time recordings, if that makes sense. Like basically, he could just out of a hat pick up a recording, who it was recorded by, when it was recorded, and on what label, and he would mimic the sound of that 78. It's amazing apparently that he could just do this stuff from his memory. He just pulled it out of his hat. And this album represents that ability of Tiny Tim. And what I really like about it is that they put a lot of time into this album. There's a little intro and outro that Tiny Tim does, and it's just really well crafted. I was very impressed by this album. So if you're a Tiny Tim fan and you don't own this, you gotta pick it up. And the coolest part, half of the limited edition is on this red, white, and you can barely see blue in there. So I think that's really cool. So total pressings for this album is 1,500 on black and 500 on this red, white, and blue vinyl. Okay, so that out of the way, here is the actual soundtrack. Technically, it's 2 soundtracks, so it makes up for that Tiny Tim. The first is Frankenhooker, and on the flip side, it's Basket Case 2. Now, I'm not sure why they did that, maybe because there wasn't that much music for one record, but they're both by Joe Renzetti. I hope I'm saying your name right. And what's cool about this, like the Tiny Tim record, it's on sort of a marbleized colored vinyl. Now, half of them are on this purple, and then the other half is on red. So the total pressing count, again, is 1,000. So 500 of each color. And also, it's cool to have a little sheet on here talking about what went into this. And this is a relatively new interview with Joe from 2016. Pretty cool stuff. If you're a fan of either of these films, this is kind of a must own, if you know what I mean. So, and it's relatively priced, so I would go check that out. Ship to Shore Media. Thanks again, Aaron. Okay, moving on. The rest are all soundtracks I've been picking up at thrift stores, flea markets, and the occasional record shop. Now, this first one's a bit of a disappointment for me, and that is the Blade Runner orchestral adaptation of music composed for the motion picture by Vangelis. So this isn't the soundtrack. I thought it was, and I freaked out, but apparently the soundtrack by Vangelis was never officially released on vinyl in the US at the time of the Blade Runner's release, or the time of Blade Runner's release. As far as I understand it, it was this weird thing, and so it kind of opened the door for these other bands and orchestras to kind of come in and play the music, and I guess they got the licensing or something, but honestly, this isn't good. I mean, I think a lot of what makes this soundtrack so good is these synthesizers, in my opinion. Honestly, I've never heard of the New American Orchestra, no offense, but it didn't win me over. All right, now we're getting some good territory. Here we have Close Encounters of the Third Kind, music by John Williams. Iconic music. Look at that gatefold cover, looks really cool with that alien ship landing. On the back here, you get some more stills. Now, the record's not in the best shape, but it was a thrift store find, so can't really complain there. Okay, so this is an interesting story. Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome. I used to have this way back when, before I moved to LA, and this is one of the albums I got rid of. And what I used to do is I kept the Tina Turner single, the picture sleeve single, with the record because I thought it was so cool. Sort of like I don't know, I felt like they belonged together. And anyway, I got rid of it, and then I found this. I believe I found this at the same flea market as I got the Blade Runner soundtrack, and I flipped out. I'm like, oh, I gotta have it. And here we go, nice gatefold cover. Lots of action shots from the film. In the back here you have, I guess these, I can't remember. I guess they're, yeah, this is with the Thunderdome. Yeah, right there, of course. Not the best in the series, but you can totally tell how the last third of this film inspired Mad Max Fury Road. That's my belief. It's definitely a must-see if you like the Mad Max movies, but it's not the best. I gotta warn you guys. So then we have Rocky 1 and Rocky 2. I was stoked to find these. I think I found them at the same place. And yeah, you know, just kind of classic movies. I actually really like Rocky 2 as a sequel. I think it picks up right where Rocky 1 or Rocky leaves off. And it's not too cheesy. I feel like they really captured the feeling of this first film. Let's see. Yeah, this one actually comes in a oh, this is kind of a nice printed sleeve. There's the record itself. Actually really good shape. And then this one, I'm sure they no, actually, no, they didn't really cheap out, but they put it in sort of a generic sleeve. And there you go. Not in the nicest condition, though, I have to admit. But this is one of those ones you pick it up now, and then down the road you find one in a better shape, and you upgrade. You know what I mean? Okay, then I got 3 James Bond soundtracks. As you may or may not know, I am trying to collect all the films on vinyl, all the soundtracks on vinyl. This one's got one of my favorite songs, James Bond songs, A View to a Kill by Duran Duran. And sadly, that's probably the best part of this soundtrack. It's not that good otherwise. I mean, it's okay, but that song really stands out amongst the rest. And I guess that's sort of the nature of James Bond films. It's kind of 1 or 2 pop songs and the rest is just orchestral score. And then we have For Your Eyes Only. I gotta be honest, this movie cover fascinated me as a kid. I remember walking by it and going like, whoa. That's a big lady there. You know, this is one of those ones that's pretty forgettable. Nothing about this particular James Bond film really stands out for me. Even the song by Sheena Easton. But it's one of those things, like, once you make that commitment to start a James Bond movie soundtrack collection, you can't really pass up on all of them. You know what I mean? You got to get them all. Lastly, out of the bunch, we have The Man with the Golden Gun. Now, this is much more iconic. Roger Moore. On the back here, got Odd Job, got the Golden Gun itself. 1974. I think this is this the... Oh, yeah, where they jump the car. Oh, man, this is a classic one. And it's got Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee's the bad guy in this. Yeah, this is one of those iconic films. Okay, and then I picked up The Deep, John Barry, one of my favorite composers. You know, I can't say I've ever seen this film. I believe it's about diving, but what's cool about this is, check this out. I believe all of them were pressed on this translucent blue vinyl. How cool is that, right? Now this is a childhood favorite, the soundtrack to Americantale. Ah, so good. With the duet, Somewhere Out There. Oh my gosh, love this. I used to sing that song in elementary school. Nothing too special about it, MCA Records. I like this version. I mean, I was stoked to find this one still with the hype sticker. It's in really good shape. I'm gonna hang on to this one. Another childhood favorite of mine, the soundtrack to Car Wash. This is so good, man. Look at that collage gatefold. On the back here, it's all pretty basic, I believe. Yeah, this one's interesting because it's got some dialogue. It's sort of like the soundtrack to American Graffiti in that sense. And I believe all of this was done by Rose Royce, if I'm not mistaken, or at least most of this was done by them. Yeah, I believe so. Anyway, great film, great soundtrack, totally worth owning. One of my all-time favorite movies, Back to the Future, featuring Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News. I was so happy to find this. And you know what? It actually is a really good soundtrack. I was surprised how many songs were actually in the film. I didn't realize that they could have enough songs to make a soundtrack. There is some score pieces like the Back to the Future Overture, but they have Night Train, Earth Angel, Johnny Be Good. One of my other favorite songs, Back in Time, that's the other Huey Lewis song. And there's one by Eric Clapton and Lindsey Buckingham. Yeah, Time Bomb Town. You know, honestly, I don't remember that. The rest are the songs that you hear during the school dance. But man, so cool. I know Mondo put out a soundtrack of 1, 2, and 3, and those, I believe, you know, I haven't looked into those, but I think those are all score. I love this cover art, and I was kind of put off by the Mondo releases. They were just a little too much for me. But I don't know, let me know what you guys think. And then we come to Ghostbusters. Now this was so cool to find. I wasn't sure if this was the Laserdisc, but no, it's the vinyl edition. So much fun to have. Not much else to say about it. I mean, it's Ghostbusters, and it's in really good shape as well. Stoked to have this. All right, now we have Raiders of the Lost Ark. This, I love these films as a kid. The fourth one, not so much. That just, I don't know if I lost that part of me or it just wasn't very good. I don't know which. But Raiders of the Lost Ark, classic, great soundtrack by John Williams. This is on Columbia. And it's in really good shape as well. I was stoked to find it. But yeah, anyway, definitely pick this one up if you see it. I also picked up Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2. 2, like the film itself, isn't as good as the first one. It's all right. Nothing really stands out for me. I mean, it's a Tony Scott movie. I think it took itself a little too serious. But man, Beverly Hills Cop 1, the first one, classic. So many great songs. The Pointer Sisters are on point on this soundtrack. So good. I love that song that starts that. I think it's a Neutron Dance is what it's called. Anyway, The Heat Is On by Glenn Frey, I guess that's how you say his name, and the Axel Foley theme. Oh my gosh, I love that song so much, and they're both on here, all on here. Definitely worth picking this soundtrack up if you see it. And lastly, we're coming to the Princess Bride soundtrack. Now, when I saw this, I was shocked that this was even released on vinyl. I had no idea. It's one of those soundtracks that it's so dated now that it's charming in that way. Like, say you were to re-release this film with a brand new score with something a little bit more traditional. I don't know if it would be as charming. There's something about the mixture of all these different elements that make this film still so beloved, and it's one of my favorites. Nothing too special. I mean, you have a nice picture of the couple, which I can't tell if this is a still from the film or if this was a production still. And on the back here, you have the composer right there and a little blurb by Rob Reiner on why he wanted to work with Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits. And the record itself comes in this plain blue printed sleeve. It's kind of curious why they put it in that. And there you go. There's the record in really good shape. Apparently this is a promo. You have the promo stamp right there, and it makes me wonder, maybe this didn't get a wide release, and maybe that's why I don't see it too often, but certainly worth picking up if you can find it. Okay guys, that will do it for this time around. I want to thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Until then, I'm your Vinyl Geek, and I'll catch you on the flip side.